Raised amid luxury and family traditions, she never imagined her life would change so abruptly. Sold in a deal she never agreed to, she finds herself trapped in a forced destiny. But rules are not always followed, and she is about to defy all expectations. Welcome to the channel. Before we begin, please like and subscribe so we can continue creating stories like this one. The sun was setting over the majestic mountains surrounding Riverdale, painting the sky with orange hues that reflected in the windows of the imposing Harrison mansion. Alexander Harrison, sole heir to the largest luxury hotel chain in America, observed the landscape from the veranda of his suite, holding a glass of red wine while listening to the laughter coming from downstairs. It was another one of those social gatherings his family hosted to maintain appearances and connections with the high echelons of New York society. "How much longer are you going to hide up here, Alex?" The voice of Ryan Martinez, his friend since boarding school days, broke his moment of solitude. "Long enough to avoid smiling at people who are only interested in my wealth," replied Alex, turning to face his friend. Ryan approached with a mischievous smile on his lips. Descended from a traditional family of California winemakers, he had the same social status as Alex, but a completely opposite personality. While Alex was reserved and cautious, Ryan lived to provoke and challenge. "Your mother is downstairs, announcing to everyone that you finally decided to get married. Is that true?" Alex let out a heavy sigh. Eleanor and her fantasies, she invited half the traditional families in the state, all with daughters of marriageable age. "It's pathetic," Ryan laughed. "And they all follow the same pattern, don't they? Thin, elegant, educated at the best European schools." "Predictable," Alex completed, taking a sip of his wine. "It's as if they were mass-produced." It was at that moment that Alex's other friends entered the room. James Woodward, heir to a real estate developer, and Matthew Peterson, son of the state governor. The four formed an exclusive group since adolescence, united by their privileges and the boredom that life of abundance frequently brought. "We were just talking about the candidates for the future, Mrs. Harrison," said Ryan, helping himself to whiskey. James threw himself into a leather armchair. "I saw that Caroline Winters is downstairs. They say she returned from Paris especially to see you." "And Danielle Richardson also came with her family. Her father practically offered her to yours as part of a business deal," added Matthew, laughing. Alex rolled his eyes, irritated by the situation. At 32, he knew he needed to fully take over the family business, and, according to Harrison tradition, this included a strategic marriage. "Since you're going to have to choose someone, why not make it more interesting?" suggested Ryan with that gleam in his eyes that always preceded a bad idea. "What do you have in mind?" asked Alex, already knowing his friend well. "A bet. Something that breaks all this monotony." The others moved closer, interested. "What if, instead of choosing one of these porcelain dolls, you married someone completely different? Someone who would shock all these people," proposed Ryan. James leaned forward. "Something like marrying a woman who doesn't fit the high society standards?" "Exactly," Ryan pointed to James enthusiastically. "A woman who isn't thin, who doesn't come from a traditional family, who doesn't speak fluent French. Someone who would make all these snobs choke on their canapes." Matthew let out a laugh. "That would be hilarious. Imagine Eleanor's face." Alex observed his friends for a moment, considering the idea. He was never one to refuse challenges, and, to be honest, the prospect of irritating his mother and that entire superficial social circle was tempting. "And what do I get out of it?" he asked, arching an eyebrow. "Besides the satisfaction of seeing all these hypocrites shocked." Ryan smiled. "If you manage to maintain this marriage for at least 6 months, each of us will give you $1 million, which will be donated to the charity of your choice," James quickly added, knowing Alex's indifference to money. "And if I lose?" "You'll have to let us choose your wife from among the candidates approved by Eleanor," Matthew answered. Boudicule. Four looked at each other, feeling the electricity of the moment. Alex knew it was a ridiculous bet, perhaps even cruel, but something inside him was too bored to refuse. "And where will I find this woman?" he finally asked. Ryan approached the window and pointed to the garden. Among the elegantly dressed guests, one figure stood out, a full-figured woman who was helping to organize the food trays. "How about starting there? Olivia Bennett, the new chef your mother hired for events. I heard she has quite a temper and isn't impressed by money or status." Alex observed the woman for a few moments. There was something different about her, in the way she moved with confidence, how she smiled without affectation. For a moment, he felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it to the back of his mind. "Deal," he said, extending his hand to seal the agreement. What Alex didn't know was that that frivolous bet, born of boredom and arrogance, would change the course of his life and everyone around him in ways he could never have imagined. Next morning, Olivia Bennett arrived early at the Harrison mansion to supervise the kitchen cleanup after the event. At 28, she had fought hard to get where she was. Born into a simple family from Philadelphia, she started washing dishes in restaurants at 15 to help at home, and with determination won a scholarship to a culinary school and gradually rose in her career through much effort. "Olivia, Mr. Harrison." "Kaya's asking you to go to his office," informed one of the maids, looking slightly confused. Frowning, Olivia removed her apron. What could the boss's son want with her? In the 3 months she had been working there, she had barely seen him, let alone spoken to him. Upon entering the luxurious office, she found Alex standing by the window, impeccably dressed in a navy blue suit that seemed to have been made exclusively for him. "You sent for me, Mr. Harrison?" she asked, keeping a professional tone. Alex turned, studying her with interest for the first time. Olivia was a beautiful woman, with expressive eyes and curly brown hair that she kept tied in a practical bun. Her curvy body was the opposite of the thin standard that his mother and social circles considered elegant. "Please sit down," he said, indicating a chair, "and call me Alex." Suspicious, Olivia sat on the edge of the chair, maintaining an upright posture. "The food yesterday was exceptional," he began. "My mother mentioned that you studied in France." "For just 1 year, with much sacrifice and a partial scholarship," she replied, still not understanding where that conversation would lead. "Impressive," he murmured, and for an instant seemed genuinely admiring. Then, as if remembering something, his countenance changed to a more calculating expression. "I have a proposal for you, Olivia. A proposal that could change your life." "What kind of proposal?" she asked, increasingly intrigued. Alex took a deep breath before answering, "I want you to marry me." The silence that followed Alex's proposal was broken only by the sound of the antique clock that decorated the wall of the office. Olivia stared at him, her brown eyes wide in disbelief before letting out a nervous laugh. "Is this some kind of joke?" she asked, rising from the chair. "If it is, I must say that your sense of humor is terrible, Mr. Harrison." Alex remained impassive, his blue eyes fixed on her with a disconcerting intensity. "It's not a joke. Say it's a serious business proposal," he replied, sitting back behind his imposing mahogany desk. "Please sit down, let me explain better." Olivia hesitated, but curiosity spoke louder. She sat back down, crossing her arms in a defensive posture. "I'm listening," she said dryly. "My family expects me to get married soon to fully take over the business. It's an outdated tradition, but important for succession," he began, choosing his words carefully. "The problem is that I don't want to marry any of the women my mother approves of. They're all the same. And I'm different enough to be your solution," asked Olivia with a hint of irritation in her voice. "What exactly are you proposing?" Alex leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. "A temporary marriage, a year at most. You'll have a generous monthly salary, much higher than what you earn as a chef, plus a substantial amount when we amicably separate at the end. During this period, you can save enough to open your own restaurant, which I know is your dream." Olivia's eyes narrowed. How did he know about her dream? She rarely talked about it. "In exchange, you'll have to behave as my wife at social events, accompany me to business dinners, and of course, live here in the mansion," he continued. "It's a purely professional agreement. No personal involvements. Olivia felt her face heat up with indignation. The proposal was absurd, offensive, and at the same time strangely tempting in its cold rationality. With the money he offered, she could really open her own restaurant, something that would take years to achieve on her own. "Why me?" she finally asked. "Among all the women in America, why choose precisely your family's chef for this arrangement?" Alex hesitated for the first time, briefly averting his gaze. "You're intelligent, articulate, and have presence. You don't get easily intimidated, and from what I saw yesterday, you know how to deal with high society people, even though you're not one of them." Olivia shook her head, incredulous. "You're choosing me because I'm not thin like your usual prospects, aren't you? Because I don't fit the elitist standards of your social class." Alex didn't deny it, and his silence was answer enough. "This is absurd," she declared, standing up again. "I'm not an object to be used in some kind of rebellion against your family." "Think what you want," he replied with irritating calmness. "But consider the proposal. $500,000 at the end of the contract, plus a monthly salary of $20,000. All legal, with a signed contract and guarantees for you." Olivia felt dizzy. That amount would completely change her life. Still, her dignity screamed against that humiliating proposal. "I have to go," she said, turning to leave. "Think for a week," suggested Alex. "And remember, it's just business. We'll both benefit from it." That night, Olivia could barely sleep in her small rented apartment in Riverdale Heights. Alex's proposal echoed in her mind like an out-of-control carousel. It was crazy to consider it, of course, but it would also be crazy to refuse an opportunity that could fulfill her childhood dream. The next day, when she arrived at the mansion to prepare lunch, she was greeted with the news that Eleanor wanted to see her urgently. With her heart racing, imagining if Alex might have told his mother something, Olivia headed to the main living room. Eleanor Harrison was the personification of American aristocracy. Thin, elegant, with perfectly dyed and styled grey hair, dressing as if each day were a special occasion. Her face, despite plastic surgeries, couldn't completely hide the signs of a life of excesses and dissatisfactions. "Ah, Olivia, come in," said Eleanor, analyzing her from head to toe with a critical look. "I need to discuss the menu for next week's charity ball. It will be the most important event of the season." Olivia immediately noticed the tension in the matriarch's face and the way she avoided looking at her directly. "Of course, Mrs. Harrison. I have some suggestions prepared," Olivia responded professionally. "We also need to discuss other matters," continued Eleanor, nervously adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist. "My son Alexander mentioned that you have been standing out in the kitchen." Olivia maintained a neutral expression, waiting for the true reason for that meeting. "Actually," Eleanor proceeded with visible discomfort, "he seems interested in you in a way that I consider concerning." "Mrs. Harrison, Don't interrupt me," the older woman cut her off coldly. "I don't know what's going on between you two, but I must warn you. My son is destined to marry someone from our social class, someone who understands our traditions and responsibilities." Olivia felt her blood boil, but maintained her composure. "With all due respect, ma'am, there is nothing going on between me and your son." "Excellent, keep it that way," said Eleanor, rising as a sign that the conversation was over. "And Olivia, I'm considering hiring an additional chef for major events, someone with more international experience." The veiled threat was clear. Olivia could be easily replaced. Swallowing her anger, she left the room with her dignity intact, but inside, she was boiling with indignation. In the hallway, she ran into Alex, who seemed to have heard part of the conversation. "I see you've met the true Harrison style of dealing with things," he commented with a sarcastic smile. "Your mother just threatened me," replied Olivia through her teeth. "Apparently, you've been talking too much about me. I just mentioned that I admired your work. It was enough to trigger her alarms," he explained, discreetly guiding her away from the curious ears of the staff. "This is just a sample of what you would face if you accepted my proposal." "Are you trying to dissuade me or convince me?" she asked, confused. "I'm being honest, it won't be easy. My family and their friends will do everything to humiliate you and force you to give up. But if you're as strong as I think you are, you'll come out of this with your financial independence guaranteed, and the satisfaction of having faced people like my mother on their own turf." For some inexplicable reason, those words touched something deep in Olivia. Her entire life had been a struggle against prejudices and doors closed by people like the Harrisons. The idea of facing them at their own game had an undeniable appeal. 3 days later, after sleepless nights of reflection, Olivia was again in Alex's office, this time with a decision made. "I have some conditions," she announced without preamble. "First, I want $1 million at the end, not 500,000. Second, I want to continue working as a chef, even if only for special events. I won't pretend to be just a trophy wife." Alex observed her with a mixture of surprise and admiration. "Third," continued Olivia, "I need legal guarantees that I will be protected in every way. A prenuptial agreement that ensures I will receive what was agreed upon, regardless of what happens." "That's fair," agreed Alex. "And fourth," she took a deep breath, "I want to know the real reason behind all this. I don't believe it's just a rebellion against your family." The silence that followed was tense. Finally, Alex sighed. "It's a bet," he admitted, "between me and my friends. They bet that I wouldn't be able to marry someone who didn't fit high society standards and maintain that marriage for at least 6 months. Olivia felt as if she had been slapped. A bet. She was the object of a bet between bored rich men. The humiliation almost made her stand up and leave, but something kept her seated, observing the man in front of her. "So I'm just a piece in a game for you and your privileged friends," she stated, her voice surprisingly calm. "How much is this bet worth? How much do you gain if you use a woman as a pawn in your little game?" $3 million, he replied honestly, "which will be donated to the charity of my choice." Olivia laughed humorlessly. "At least it's not for personal greed," she commented. "And what happens if you lose?" "I'll have to marry one of the candidates approved by my mother." For a long moment, Olivia considered the absurd situation she was about to get herself into. It was degrading, cruel, and manipulative, but it was also a unique opportunity to turn the tables against those who had always dictated the rules. $1,200,000, she finally said. "And I want a clause that says that if at any time I discover that you intentionally humiliated me, the amount doubles." Alex extended his hand. "We have a deal, future Mrs. Harrison." Olivia shook his hand, sealing a pact that would change their lives forever. "Just one more thing," she added, her eyes fixed on his. "Don't think that I will be easily manipulated, or that I will break at the first insult. If I'm entering this game, it's to play it to the end, and I can guarantee you, Alex, that you have no idea what you've just unleashed." The announcement of the engagement between Alexander Harrison and Olivia Bennett fell like a bomb in Riverdale social circles. Within hours, the phones of the entire New York high society were ringing non-stop, and messaging apps were buzzing with speculation and malicious comments. How could the most eligible bachelor in the state, heir to a fortune estimated in billions, choose precisely the kitchen chef, an ordinary woman of simple origin and with a body that didn't fit the aesthetic standards of that exclusive universe? At the Harrison mansion, chaos ensued. Eleanor locked herself in her room for 2 days, refusing to speak even to her husband, Richard Harrison, who tried in vain to calm her. When she finally emerged, with deep, dark circles and a haggard countenance, she went straight to her son's office. "Have you completely lost your mind?" she questioned, closing the door forcefully. "A cook, Alexander? A fat woman with no pedigree? What would your grandparents say if they were alive?" Alex, who was already expecting this reaction, remained impassive. "They would probably say the same thing they said when you married Dad, a man whose grandfather was a simple Italian immigrant. A disgrace, an inadequate mixture of bloodlines," he replied with irony. "And yet, here we are." Eleanor turned pale. Few mentioned her not-so-noble origins as she would like to pretend. "This is different," she retorted, regaining her composure. "Richard came from a family that, despite everything, had earned respect and position. This girl has absolutely nothing to offer except appetizers for parties. Olivia is an internationally awarded chef, Mother, and she has much more to offer than most of your blue blood candidates. Intelligence, for example, her own personality, character. Don't be ridiculous. She's obviously only interested in your money. Alex laughed, genuinely amused. You would be surprised, Mother. Olivia is not easily impressed by money or status. Perhaps that's exactly what attracted me to her. Eleanor stared at him for a long moment, her hands trembling slightly. Your father and I won't allow this. I'm already 32 and control half of the company's shares, Alex reminded her calmly. I don't need your permission. The wedding will take place in a month, with or without your presence. I hope you choose to be there. Meanwhile, in the small apartment she still occupied in Riverdale Heights, Olivia was facing her own hell. Since the news leaked, she hadn't stopped receiving calls and messages, some congratulations from friends genuinely happy, others from journalists thirsty for a juicy story, and many from acquaintances who barely disguised their envy and suspicion. Who would have thought, huh? From the kitchen to the living room, commented Vanessa, a former co-worker who had never hidden her resentment of Olivia's talent. How did you manage that, friend? What's your secret? Olivia took a deep breath, controlling the urge to respond in kind. There's no secret, Vanessa. Alexander and I connected in an unexpected way. Ah, yes, of course, connection, Vanessa laughed. Well, enjoy it while it lasts. Men like him always go back to women like, well, you know. After hanging up, Olivia sat on the small balcony of her apartment, looking at the starry sky of Riverdale Heights. What had she gotten herself into? It was a fake marriage based on a cruel bet, but still, people would judge and speculate about her life as if everything were real. For a moment, doubt assailed her. Maybe she should give up before the situation got worse. The phone rang again, this time showing the name of her mother, Janet Bennett, a simple woman who had raised Olivia alone after the abandonment of her biological father. With a heavy heart, Olivia answered. Hi, Mom. Honey, is it true what they're saying on television? That you're going to marry the owner of all those hotels? Olivia closed her eyes. She hadn't told her mother anything yet, waiting to find the right moment. Now, it was too late. It's true that I'm going to marry Alexander Harrison, Mom, but he's not exactly the owner, he's the heir. There was a silence on the other end of the line, followed by a worried sigh. Honey, you've barely mentioned this man before. Are you really in love, or is there something else behind this? You know you can tell me anything. Janet's direct question caught her off guard. For a moment, Olivia considered telling the truth, that it was all a farce, a contract, a bet. But that would mean exposing her mother to the same judgment she herself would face. It's complicated, Mom, she finally replied. It happened very fast, but we're going ahead with it. Are you happy, my daughter? The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. Was she happy? No, but she was determined to come out of that situation with her head held high and financially independent, ready to start her own business. I will be, Mom. Trust me. The wedding was celebrated exactly 1 month later in an intimate ceremony in the gardens of the Harrison mansion. Despite Alex's expectations, his parents attended, although Eleanor maintained a rigid expression that barely disguised her displeasure. On the bride's side, only Janet and a few close friends, visibly uncomfortable among the high society guests. The bride surprised everyone with her beauty. Wearing an elegant dress that valued her curves instead of trying to hide them, Olivia radiated a confidence that left many guests open-mouthed. Alex himself seemed genuinely impressed to see her walk to the altar, and for an instant, forgot that it was all just an act. After the ceremony, during the small reception, Olivia was approached by Patricia Winslow, a socialite known for her sharp tongue and influence in the most exclusive circles of New York. Darling, what an interesting dress, Patricia commented, analyzing her from head to toe. It must have been a challenge to find something in your size. Instead of being intimidated, Olivia smiled broadly. Actually, Patricia, it was surprisingly easy. There are incredible designers working with all body types these days. It's a shame that some people are still stuck in outdated standards, don't you think? Patricia paled slightly, not expecting such an articulate response. Well, I hope you're happy, dear. Marriage requires adaptations, especially when you come from such different backgrounds. Thank you for your concern, replied Olivia, maintaining her smile. But I believe that it's precisely these differences that make us unique and interesting, don't you agree? From a distance, Alex observed the interaction with interest, surprised by Olivia's poise. Beside him, Ryan couldn't hide his amusement. Your bride is doing better than we expected, he commented. Perhaps the bet isn't as easy to win as we thought. Did you doubt my ability to choose? Replied Alex, not taking his eyes off Olivia. I confess I did. I thought you would choose someone less articulate, easier to manipulate. That would be too boring, said Alex, standing up, and contrary to the purpose of the bet. As he approached Olivia, Alex noticed how she had won over a small circle of guests who seemed genuinely interested in her conversation about contemporary gastronomy. Taking her by the waist, he whispered in her ear, "You're standing out." Mrs. Harrison, Olivia smiled, keeping up appearances. "I'm just being myself, darling, something you should try someday." The double meaning of the phrase didn't go unnoticed by Alex, who led her to the dance floor. "This is our moment," he whispered. "Everyone is watching. Convince them." As they danced to the sound of a slow song, Olivia realized, with a mixture of irritation and amusement, that she was beginning to enjoy the challenge. For every look of contempt she received, she responded with a confident smile. For every malicious comment, she retorted with intelligence. It was as if she had finally found an arena where her daily battle against prejudice gained a larger, more visible stage. In the weeks that followed, the sensation couple became the main subject of media specializing in celebrities and New York high society. To the surprise of many, Olivia seemed perfectly at ease in her new role. She participated in charity events, business dinners, and social gatherings with a natural elegance that was beginning to win over even the most severe critics. One of these events was the annual charity ball, organized by Eleanor Harrison, a tradition that brought together the most influential families in the state. Everyone was anxiously waiting to see how the new daughter-in-law would be received by the notoriously demanding mother-in-law. On the morning of the ball, Olivia was surprised by a visit from Eleanor to her quarters in the mansion. Yes, she and Alex maintained separate rooms, although few knew this. "Olivia, dear, I personally came to bring you a gift for tonight," announced Eleanor with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "A dress specially designed for you." Eleanor revealed an extravagant dress, covered in ruffles and excessive details that were clearly designed to draw attention to parts of the body that Olivia would probably prefer not to highlight. "As president of the committee, I always give her the women of the family outfits for the ball. It's tradition," explained Eleanor. "I hope it fits. The designer worked with the measurements I could provide." Olivia examined the dress calmly, immediately recognizing the attempt at humiliation. "It's very kind of you, Mrs. Harrison," she replied with a serene smile. "But I already have my dress for tonight. Perhaps another occasion. But it's tradition, dear. All Harrison women wear coordinated dresses at this event. I believe I've already broken several traditions by marrying your son, haven't I?" "One. More won't make a difference," replied Olivia, maintaining an educated but firm tone. "Besides, I'm determined to show that a woman with a body like mine can dress elegantly without resorting to artifices." Eleanor's face contorted into an expression of barely contained anger. "You don't understand, do you? It's not just about dresses or appearances. It's about respect for the traditions of a family that has existed for generations, something that someone like you, coming from nothing, will never understand." "On the contrary, Mrs. Harrison," retorted Olivia, rising to her full height. "I understand perfectly. I understand that true respect comes from character and actions, not from surnames or bank accounts. And that's a lesson I hope your entire family eventually learns." That night, Olivia entered the grand ballroom wearing an elegant navy blue dress that she had commissioned from a designer specializing in plus-size fashion. The outfit was sophisticated and modern, valuing her curves without exaggeration. The buzz that followed was immediate, not of derision, as Eleanor had hoped, but of surprised admiration. "You look stunning," commented Alex upon seeing her, and for the first time since they met, he seemed genuinely impressed. "I'm just fulfilling my part of the agreement," she replied, trying to ignore the effect that the sincere compliment had on her. "In any case, thank you for not wearing what my mother offered. It was an obvious trap." "I know, but don't worry, your secret is safe with me," she murmured while smiling for the photographers. "What secret?" "That you're not completely insensitive as you try to appear." As they circulated through the ballroom, Alex noticed how Olivia interacted. Naturally, with people of all social levels present, from waiters to politicians, from young heirs to elderly aristocrats. There was an authenticity about her that contrasted with the prevailing artificiality in that environment. "How do you do that?" he asked when they had a moment alone. "Do what?" "Stay so yourself amid all this." Olivia studied him for a moment, trying to decipher if there was sincerity in the question. "When you grow up having to fight for your place in every space you occupy, you learn that the only thing no one can take from you is your essence," she finally replied. "I may wear expensive dresses and learn etiquette, but at the end of the day, I'm Janet Bennett's daughter. Grew up in Philadelphia washing dishes to help at home, and none of that is something to be ashamed of." Something in Alex's look changed, as if he were seeing Olivia in a new light. Before he could respond, they were interrupted by Patricia Winslow and a group of socialites. "Olivia, dear, we were just discussing how you have adapted surprisingly well to our circle," commented Patricia with false sweetness. "It must be fascinating for you to be on the other side now, isn't it? Serving instead of being served." The women around laughed discreetly, satisfied with the jab, but Olivia, far from being intimidated, smiled serenely. "You know, Patricia, one of the most valuable things I learned in my career is that knowing both sides of an operation, whether in the kitchen or in life, makes us more complete and competent. I know exactly the work involved in events like this, from menu preparation to flower selection, something you may never have experienced." She paused calculatedly before adding, "It's a pity, really. There's a lot of beauty in understanding the backstage of life, not just its facade." The silence that followed was broken only when Alex, to everyone's surprise, including Olivia's, leaned in and kissed her with apparent passion. "This is my wife," he declared when they separated, looking directly at the group of stunned women. "And I'm extremely proud of her." Later, when they were alone again, Olivia confronted him. "What was that? It wasn't in our agreement." "A necessary improvisation," he replied, averting his gaze. "It needed to look convincing." "Convince who? Them or yourself?" The question went unanswered, hovering in the air like a smokescreen that was beginning to dissipate between them. 3 months after the wedding, the relationship between Alex and Olivia had transformed into something neither of them expected. They still slept in separate rooms and maintained the agreed charade, but a strange camaraderie began to emerge between them. They shared inside jokes about the absurdities of high society, exchanged knowing looks during tedious events, and surprisingly spent more and more time together, even when there were no witnesses to impress. On a particularly pleasant Sunday afternoon, the two were sitting on the veranda of the mansion, Olivia reading a book on molecular gastronomy, while Alex worked on his laptop. It was a comfortable silence, broken only by the occasional comment about the weather or some news of the day. "Alexander," called Richard, Alex's father, as he appeared on the veranda. "May I speak with you privately?" Alex exchanged a quick glance with Olivia before following his father to the office. Richard Harrison was the antithesis of Eleanor in many ways. While she was rigid and obsessive with appearances, he had always been more pragmatic and focused on business. He didn't completely approve of his son's marriage, but neither did he show the open hostility of his wife. "We received a concerning report about the resort in Key West," began Richard, getting straight to the point as always. "Bookings have fallen drastically in the last quarter, and online reviews are terrible. We need someone from the family to personally take charge of the situation." Alex frowned. The Florida resort was one of the oldest in the chain and had sentimental value for his father, who had bought it while still young when he was beginning to expand the business. I understand. You want me to go there? Not just that. I want you to temporarily take over the management of the resort, 3 months minimum, to resolve the structural problems and recover the reputation. Alex was silent, processing the information. 3 months in Key West would mean leaving Olivia at the mansion, alone with his mother and the entire social circle that still constantly tested her. And Olivia? Can she come with me? Richard looked at his son with a curious expression. I thought the marriage was more of a formality than... He hesitated, choosing his words. Your mother mentioned that you keep separate rooms. Alex felt a slight discomfort upon realizing that his mother still monitored his intimate life. Our situation is complex, he replied vaguely. But Olivia is my wife. If I'm going to spend 3 months in Key West, I'd like her to accompany. Senator, of course, agreed Richard, seeming relieved. In fact, it would be great. Guests love to see that the hotel is managed by a present family. It's part of the charm of the chain. When Alex returned to the veranda, he found Olivia in the same place, but with her gaze lost on the horizon, as if she were absorbed in distant thoughts. We need to talk, he announced, sitting across from I. Sounds serious, observed Olivia, closing her book. My father wants me to go to Key West to personally manage the resort that's facing problems. It would be 3 months minimum. Olivia nodded slowly, absorbing the information. I understand. This changes our plans. I want you to come with me, said Alex, surprising her. Why? There's no one watching in Key West. We don't need to keep up appearances there. Alex looked away, uncomfortable with the direct question. It's a practical matter. The resort is marketed as a family business. The presence of the heir's wife would create a positive impression on guests. Olivia studied him for a moment, as if trying to read something in his face. Just that, a practical matter. What else would it be? He retorted defensively. She sighed, closing the book in her lap. Nothing, forget it. When do we leave? 2 weeks later, the couple landed at Key West Airport, where they were greeted by Daniel Morris, the current manager of Harrison Bay Blue Resort, a middle-aged man visibly nervous about the heir's arrival. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, it's an honor to receive you, greeted Daniel, escorting them to a luxurious van that would take them to the beachfront resort. We've prepared the presidential suite for you and organized a welcome dinner with the management team tonight. Alex and Olivia exchanged quick glances. The presidential suite meant a single room, something they hadn't anticipated. The resort was magnificent, despite the management problems. Located on a semi-private beach, with architecture that blended colonial and contemporary influences, it had the potential to be any tourist's dream destination. However, as they walked through the corridors, Olivia immediately noticed details that betrayed neglect. Stained carpets, peeling paint, staff with discouraged expressions. How long have you worked here, Mr. Morris? She asked politely as they went up to the suite. 10 years, ma'am, the best of my life, he replied with enthusiasm that seemed forced. When they arrived at the suite, they were left alone. The environment was spacious and luxurious, with a stunning view of the sea, but only one king-size bed dominated the main bedroom. Well, this complicates things, commented Alex, placing his suitcase on a sofa. Let's not panic, replied Olivia. Pragmatically, you can sleep on the living room sofa, it's big enough. Or you could sleep there, he teased with a half smile. I'm not the one who's receiving $3 million for this charade, she retorted. The least you can do is give up the bed. Alex laughed, raising his hands in surrender. Fair enough. The sofa looks comfortable enough. During the welcome dinner, Alex observed how Olivia interacted naturally with the hotel staff, asking insightful questions about the operation and showing genuine interest in the staff's personal stories. In contrast, Daniel seemed increasingly nervous, especially when Alex began to question the recent numbers of the enterprise. We've noticed a 40% drop in occupancy rate compared to the same period last year, commented Alex, analyzing the reports. When exactly did this decline begin? Daniel swallowed hard. Well, it began gradually about 8 months ago, but has intensified in the last 3. Coincidentally, when Mr. Morris's daughter took over as executive chef, commented one of the department managers discreetly, a young man named Robert. The silence that followed was awkward. Olivia, sensing the tension, intervened. "I'm a trained chef. I'd love to visit the kitchens tomorrow and exchange experiences with the team. Perhaps we can identify areas for improvement." Her diplomatic suggestion momentarily eased the atmosphere, but Alex had already noticed something important. There was a network of favoritism and possibly incompetence that would need to be dismantled. After dinner back at the suite, Alex seemed thoughtful as he organized some sheets on the sofa. "Your intervention was skillful," he commented. "You have a natural talent for diplomacy." "Years managing stressed kitchens taught me to mediate conflicts," replied Olivia, emerging from the bathroom wearing a hotel robe. "Besides, I really want to see how the kitchen is doing. If the rest of the hotel is in this state, I can't imagine the hygiene conditions there." Alex observed her for a moment, noting how she seemed comfortable in her own skin, even wearing just a simple robe. "I think we have a bigger problem than the kitchen," he commented, returning to the professional subject. "There's something strange about the numbers Daniel presented. The expenses don't correspond to the drop in revenue." "You think he's embezzling money?" "I don't know. Maybe it's incompetence, maybe it's something more serious. I'll need to investigate discreetly." In the days that followed, Alex immersed himself in the administration of the resort, reviewing accounts, interviewing employees, and observing processes. Olivia, in turn, naturally took on the task of auditing the food and beverage operations, quickly discovering that Daniel's daughter, Claire Morris, wasn't qualified for the position she occupied and had implemented a mediocre menu with questionable quality ingredients. On a particularly revealing afternoon, while reviewing contracts with suppliers in the kitchen, Olivia discovered something alarming. They were paying prices far above market for basic inputs. "Alex, I need to show you this," she said, entering the temporary office he had set up in a meeting room. To her surprise, she found him on the phone with a grave expression. "Yes, Mother, we're adapting. No, I don't know exactly when we'll return. Yes, we're following the plan." When he hung up, Alex looked exhausted. "Eleanor?" asked Olivia, sitting across from him. "Who else would it be?" She called to check if we're still maintaining the charade and apparently to remind me that my friends are increasingly impressed with the durability of our experiment. Something in his expression seemed to hurt Olivia, who rose quickly. "Well, I'm glad you're winning your bet. How much longer?" 3 months to complete the 6 agreed. "Olivia, that's not what—" "Never mind," she cut him off. "I came to show you something important. I think I've discovered where the resort's money is going." She placed on the table the documents she had found, explaining her suspicions that Daniel had created shell companies for supplies, overpricing products and diverting the difference. Alex examined the papers, impressed with Olivia's insight. "This is amazing. How did you notice this?" "Years of buying for restaurants. I know market prices like the back of my hand. These values are absurdly inflated. We need more evidence before confronting him," pondered Alex. "And we need to be discreet. If he knows we're investigating, he might destroy evidence." That night, as they dined on the suite's veranda, a tropical storm approached the coast. The wind agitated the palm trees, and the sea roared in the distance, creating an almost cinematic atmosphere. "This view is impressive, even with the weather closing in," commented Olivia, observing the dark clouds forming on the horizon. "It's one of the reasons my father bought this place," replied Alex, helping himself to more wine. "He always had a keen eye for natural beauty. He was one of the first businessmen to invest in ecotourism in America." The conversation flowed naturally, moving from business to personal stories. After a bottle of wine, Alex surprised Olivia with an unexpected question. "Why did you accept this charade? Was it really just for the money?" Olivia studied him for a moment, considering the question. "At the beginning, yes," she finally admitted. "The opportunity to open my restaurant was irresistible, but I confess there was something else." "What?" "A chance to show people like your mother and your friends that we aren't defined by our appearance or social origin. She paused, twirling the wineglass between her fingers. And you, why did you really propose this? Was it really just a bet, or was there more? Alex looked at the horizon, where lightning was beginning to illuminate the night sky. Honestly, at the beginning, it was just boredom and rebellion, a way to irritate my mother and amuse myself at the expense of the system I've always hated, but from which I've also always benefited. He turned to face her. But now, a deafening thunder interrupted what he was about to say. The storm had finally arrived, bringing with it torrential rain that forced them to run inside. I think that conversation will have to wait, commented Olivia as they closed the veranda doors. That same night, while the storm lashed the resort, Ryan Martinez arrived unexpectedly at the hotel, soaked by the rain and with an expression that mixed amusement and malice. "Surprise," he exclaimed when Alex opened the suite door. "I thought I'd pay a visit to the most talked-about couple of the moment." Olivia, who was coming out of the bathroom, froze at the sight of Alex's friend. She was wearing only a nightgown covered by a robe and quickly tightened the belt around her waist. "Ryan," said Alex, clearly uncomfortable, "what are you doing here?" "I came to Key West on business and thought, why not visit my friends, especially when one of them is about to win a $3 million bet." He looked at Olivia with a calculated smile. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "You're not," replied Olivia coldly. "In fact, we were just going to bed. Separately, as always." Ryan's smile widened. "Ah, so the charade continues even when no one is watching? Interesting." Alex closed the door behind his friend, giving Olivia an apologetic look. "How long do you plan to stay?" he asked, trying to sound casual. "Just tonight. I have meetings tomorrow in Miami, but I couldn't miss the opportunity to see how you're interpreting your roles." He sat comfortably in an armchair. "So, Olivia, how is it being Mrs. Harrison, everything you dreamed of?" Olivia maintained her composure, even in the face of the obvious provocation. "Actually, Ryan, it has been a revealing experience. I've learned a lot about your friend and about the world he lives in. I can imagine. And you, Alex, are you enjoying the life of a married man? The others are really impressed with your dedication." Alex felt a growing discomfort with the direction of the conversation. "It's not about impressing anyone. It's about fulfilling the agreement." Of course, agreed Ryan, looking from one to the other with curiosity. "Just the agreement, nothing more." The tension in the room was palpable. Olivia announced she was tired and retired to the bedroom, leaving the two friends alone. When the door closed, Ryan let out a low laugh. "You're screwed, my friend." "What are you talking about?" "You really think I didn't notice?" "You're in love with her." Alex choked on the whiskey he had just served. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Then why did you bring her to Key West when you could have maintained appearances just in Riverdale? Why do your eyes follow her around the room like a lost puppy?" Ryan shook his head, amused. Alexander Harrison, the eternal bachelor, finally fell into his own trap. "You're delusional," retorted Alex, although he felt an uncomfortable heat rising up his neck. "It's just a business agreement." "If that's what you say." Ryan shrugged, accepting the glass that Alex offered him. "But just so you know, James believes she's involved too. He saw how she looks at you when she thinks no one is paying attention." Alex tried to ignore the effect those words had on him. "You two should find a hobby that isn't speculating about my personal life." Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Olivia struggled with her own conflicting thoughts. Ryan's presence brought back the harsh reality. For Alex and his friends, she was just a pawn in a game, a bet, something to have fun with. Any kindness or moment of connection she believed she had shared with him in the past few weeks was probably just an act. The next morning, Ryan left early, but not before dropping a bomb that would change everything. During breakfast on the suite's veranda, as he was saying goodbye, he casually mentioned, "Oh, I forgot to tell you yesterday. The great socialite Patricia Winslow is organizing a special report about you for American Elite magazine. She feels there's something suspicious about your relationship and is determined to expose the truth. Seems like she hired a private investigator to follow you." Olivia almost dropped her coffee cup. An investigator, why? What does she gain from this? Ryan smiled, as if the answer were obvious. Patricia never got over the fact that Alex refused to marry her niece, Allison. She's convinced that your marriage is a sham and wants to prove it. If she succeeds, it will be the social scandal of the decade. After Ryan left, the silence between Olivia and Alex was deafening. "This changes everything," she finally said. "If that woman exposes our agreement, we'll both be publicly humiliated. Your mother will never forgive you and my professional reputation will be ruined." Alex ran his hands through his hair, visibly stressed. "We need to be more convincing," he concluded. "If there really is an investigator following us, we have to make him believe we're a genuine, passionate and committed couple." "How do you suggest we do that?" asked Olivia, crossing her arms. "Well, for starters, we need to share the room, for real." Alex's suggestion hung in the air like a dense and intoxicating perfume. Share the room for real. The idea provoked, in Olivia, a confusing mixture of emotions that she tried in vain to disguise. "We don't need to go that far," she argued, keeping her voice firm despite her racing heart. "We can just change our routines in public spaces, more frequent displays of affection, perhaps some passionate looks during dinner. And when we return to the suite, if there really is an investigator, he has probably already bribed some hotel employee. We need to be convincing at all times." Olivia sighed, recognizing the logic in the argument. "All right, but let's establish some clear rules." "Of course," Alex quickly agreed. "You can have the bed, I'll continue on the sofa. We just need to create the impression that we sleep together." Something in the way he avoided her gaze made Olivia question if there was more behind that suggestion than simple concern about possible exposure. But she quickly dismissed that thought. It was dangerous to interpret Alex's actions as anything beyond self-preservation. In the days that followed, the couple implemented their new strategy. In public, they became more demonstrative. They exchanged caresses, prolonged looks, and occasional kisses that, to the surprise of both, began to awaken sensations that neither had anticipated. However, when they returned to the privacy of the suite, they maintained the agreed distance, although the atmosphere between them had become strangely charged. Meanwhile, Olivia and Alex continued their investigation into the irregularities at the resort. After a deeper analysis of the financial records, Alex confirmed their suspicions. Daniel had created a complex network of shell companies to divert money from the enterprise. "I need to confront him," said Alex one night, as they reviewed the evidence they had gathered. They were sitting side by side on the living room sofa, papers and laptops spread across the coffee table. "I don't think it's prudent to do that." "Alone," replied Olivia, concerned. "We don't know how he'll react when he realizes he's been discovered." "What do you suggest? Call the police immediately?" "No, not yet. But we could create a controlled situation, a meeting with other managers present, for example." Alex smiled, admiring Olivia's strategic reasoning. "You would make an excellent executive, you know. You have a natural instinct for business." The sincere compliment caught her off guard, making her blush slightly. "Just common sense. Something that apparently isn't as common as it should be in the corporate world." The plan was put into practice the next day. Alex convened a complete management meeting, supposedly to discuss the restructuring plan for the resort. Olivia would be present as a food and beverage consultant, a title they created to justify her participation. When everyone was gathered in the conference room, Alex began by presenting some positive data about the small improvements they had already implemented. Then gradually he directed the conversation to the financial discrepancies. "And now I'd like to discuss something concerning that we found in the internal audit," he announced, his tone becoming more serious. "There is substantial evidence of irregularities in supplier contracts." Daniel's face visibly paled. "What kind of irregularities?" he asked, his voice slightly trembling. Instead of answering directly, Alex began to project documents on the screen proving the shell companies and overpaid payments. With each slide, Daniel's discomfort increased until he finally exploded. "This is absurd! A conspiracy against me!" he shouted, rising abruptly. I have dedicated my life to this resort. And apparently you have also diverted approximately $2 million in the last 18 months, replied Alex calmly. The evidence is incontestable, Daniel. What followed was an emotional and disturbing confession. With tears in his eyes, Daniel revealed that he had begun diverting small amounts to pay for his wife's medical treatment, who suffered from a rare disease. But what started as a desperate measure turned into an increasingly larger scheme, especially after his daughter returned from a failed culinary course abroad, demanding a position and a salary compatible with her ambitions. I knew she didn't have enough talent or experience, he admitted, defeated. But as a father, how could I say no? The revelation left the room in silence. Olivia observed Alex, curious to see how he would handle the situation. To her surprise, he didn't show the fury that would be expected. Your actions are unjustifiable, Daniel, regardless of the motives, he finally said. You betrayed my family's trust and harmed this enterprise that my father so values. You will be dismissed and prosecuted for the embezzlement. He paused, considering his next words. However, considering your personal circumstances, I'm willing to use my influence to ensure that the process is conducted with discretion. And regarding your wife's health, I can help find other forms of medical support that don't involve theft. The meeting concluded with Daniel being escorted out of the building by security. The atmosphere among the remaining employees was a mixture of shock, relief, and apprehension about the future. Later that day, while they organized the administrative transition with Robert, the young manager who would temporarily take Daniel's position, Olivia pulled Alex to a secluded corner. You surprised me today, she said. How so? The way you handled Daniel. It was firm but also human. It wasn't what I expected. Alex studied her for a moment, intrigued. And what did you expect? Honestly, that you would destroy him publicly, without mercy, without consideration, for the circumstances. Is that really what you think of me? That I'm so cold and calculating? There was a genuine hurt in his voice that made Olivia reconsider. Since they arrived in Key West, she had been observing Alex interact with employees at all levels, from managers to maids. And, contrary to her initial expectation, he treated everyone with the same respect. Not anymore, she replied honestly. I think I'm beginning to see an Alex different from the one who proposed that absurd bet to me. Something in his eyes lit up with this admission, but before he could respond, they were interrupted by an urgent staff member. That night, after a long day dealing with the repercussions of Daniel's dismissal, they returned exhausted to the suite. The storm that had begun days before had finally dissipated, leaving the air clean and the sky starry. A glass of wine on the veranda, suggested Alex. I think we deserve it after the day we've had. Olivia nodded, grateful for the suggestion. While he opened the bottle, she leaned against the railing of the veranda, letting the sea breeze refresh her face. The waves broke gently on the beach below, creating a hypnotic melody that seemed to wash away the stress of the day. To the success of the operation, toasted Alex, handing her a glass. And to your surprising humanity, she added, lightly touching her glass to his. Alex laughed softly. You know, when I proposed this marriage, I never imagined that you would see me as a monster, and I never imagined I would see beyond the facade of the arrogant playboy, she retorted with a smile. A comfortable silence settled between them as they observed the sea under the moonlight. There was something different about that moment, an intimacy that transcended the act they had been maintaining for external eyes. Olivia, began Alex, his voice lower and hesitant, there's something I need to tell you. The serious tone put her on alert. What is it? More problems at the resort? No, it's not about work. He took a deep breath as if gathering courage. It's about us, about this situation. Olivia's heart inexplicably accelerated. What about our situation? Ryan was right about one thing, he continued, avoiding her gaze. This stopped being just a bet for me. At some point between all the discussions, the dinners, the nights working side by side, something changed. Olivia felt the air leave, her lungs uncertain if she was correctly understanding what he was trying to say. What exactly changed, Alex? Finally, he looked directly into her eyes. Me. I changed. The way I see you changed. He ran his hand through his hair, in a nervous gesture that she already knew well. Damn, this is difficult. I've never been good with feelings. Try, she encouraged, her voice almost a whisper. I think I'm falling in love with you, Olivia. Truly. And it has nothing to do with the bet or with appearances. It's about who you are, how you think, how you challenge me to be better. The confession hung between them like a delicate crystal that could shatter at the slightest touch. Olivia felt a wave of conflicting emotions, joy, fear, distrust, hope. How can I believe that? She finally asked, her voice betraying the vulnerability she was trying to hide. How can I be sure it's not just another tactic to ensure that the charade remains convincing? Alex took a step in her direction, but stopped, respecting her space. You're right to doubt. I've done nothing to earn your trust from the beginning. I started all this as a game, a stupid bet. But now, he paused, seeking the right words. Now I would give everything to go back and have met you in another way, an honest way without lies or manipulations. Olivia felt unexpected tears burning in her eyes. I've been feeling things I didn't expect too, she admitted softly. And that scares me much more than any private investigator or public exposure. Why? Because this time it's not a contract, Alex. There are no clauses to protect me. There's no agreed value to compensate for the pain if everything goes wrong. The vulnerability in her voice touched something deep in Alex. Without thinking, he approached and gently took her face between his hands. Then we'll build something new, something real, if you're willing to try. The kiss that followed was different from all the others they had exchanged before, those to maintain appearances, to convince others. This one was true, loaded with emotions that both had tried to repress for months. When they separated, Olivia still kept her eyes closed, as if fearing that upon opening them, the magic of the moment would be lost. This complicates everything, she murmured. I know, agreed Alex. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing something truly right. The rest of the night passed in a bubble of newly discovered intimacy. They talked for hours, sharing childhood stories, fears, dreams, as if they were really getting to know each other for the first time, and in a way they were. The next morning, as they walked hand in hand on the deserted beach, they were surprised by the sound of a camera. A stranger was observing them from a distance, with a telescopic lens pointed in their direction. Damn, it's Patricia's investigator, whispered Alex, instinctively placing himself in front of Olivia as if to protect her. What do we do? Nothing, he replied, turning to face her. There's nothing for him to discover now, is there? This, he pointed to the space between them, is real. Olivia smiled, feeling a weight being lifted from her shoulders. Yes, it is real. The man continued photographing from a distance, clearly frustrated at not capturing what he expected, evidence of a charade. Instead, he was documenting without knowing the genuine beginning of something new. Upon returning to the resort, they were greeted by Robert, who seemed agitated. Mr. Harrison, Mrs. Harrison, we have a situation. A journalist from American Elite magazine is at reception, insisting on speaking with you, says she's a personal friend of Mrs. Patricia Winslow. Alex and Olivia exchanged worried looks. Patricia's offensive had begun earlier than they expected. We'll receive her in the garden, decided Alex. And Robert, please provide a complete coffee service. Let's show this reporter exactly how the Harrisons receive even those who try to harm them. Are you sure about this? Asked Olivia as they headed to the location. Alex squeezed her hand reassuringly. Totally, there's nothing more to hide. Patricia can send as many reporters as she wants, but she'll only find a genuinely involved couple trying to save a family business. In the lush garden of the resort, they found an elegant woman of about 40, impeccably styled blonde hair and a calculating look. Amanda Torres, the most feared journalist in American social media, known for destroying reputations with her investigative reports. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, what a pleasure to finally meet you in person, she greeted with false cordiality. I've been following your story with great interest. I imagine so, replied Alex politely. My friend Patricia must have shared many interesting theories with you. Amanda smiled, a gesture that didn't reach her eyes. My report promises to be revealing. I'm investigating marriages of convenience in American high society, and yours caught my particular attention. A billionaire heir who suddenly marries a kitchen chef with no previous relationship history? It's intriguing, to say the least. Love often emerges in the most unexpected places, replied Olivia calmly. I believe that's precisely the beauty of it. Love, repeated Amanda, savoring the word as if it were a dubious wine. A convenient word, don't you think? Especially when there's so much at stake. What exactly are you insinuating, Ms. Torres? Asked Alex, his tone still polite, but with increasing firmness. Just that there are interesting rumors circulating in Riverdale. Rumors about bets, financial agreements, a marriage arranged to shock society. Olivia felt her stomach sink. So someone really had discovered the truth about the beginning of it all. You know, Ms. Torres, said Alex, surprising both, relationships are rarely simple or linear. Ours certainly wasn't. There were complications, misunderstandings, even moments of pure selfishness on my part. But you know what matters in the end. Enlighten me, replied the journalist, clearly not expecting that direct approach. What matters is where we're going, not where we came from. And I can say with absolute certainty that I've never been so sure about my feelings for someone as I am now, looking at my wife. The look he gave Olivia at that moment contained so much genuine love that even Amanda seemed momentarily disarmed. A beautiful story, she finally commented, but my readers prefer raw truth to romantic fiction. Then give them the truth, challenged Olivia, finding her voice and her courage. Say that you found a couple working together to save a family business, facing challenges, discovering each other in the process. Tell about how sometimes true love can be born from the most unlikely circumstances. Wouldn't that be more interesting than just another manufactured scandal? Amanda's reaction wasn't what they expected. Instead of irritation or disdain, she showed genuine interest, almost professional. You're good, she admitted with something close to admiration. Really good. I can't determine if you're brilliantly manipulating me or being sincere. Why not stay a few days and find out for yourself? Suggested Alex. Observe, investigate, ask your questions. We offer complete hospitality. If at the end you still believe there's a scandal story, write it. But perhaps, just perhaps, you'll find a much more interesting narrative than the one you came looking for. The audacious challenge left the journalist visibly tempted. An intriguing proposal, she conceded. Very well, Mr. Harrison, I accept your offer. 3 days of observation without restrictions. We'll see what emerges. When Amanda retreated to settle into the room assigned to her, Olivia turned to Alex, perplexed. You just invited an investigative reporter to spy on us. That's crazy. It's strategy, he corrected, smiling confidently. People like Amanda and Patricia expect resistance, denial, closed doors. Transparency is the last thing they anticipate. And if she discovers everything, the beginning, the bet, the contract, then she'll also discover the end of this story, that what began as a charade transformed into something real and true. He held her hands between his. That is, if you agree that there's something real between us. The look that Olivia gave him contained all the answer he needed. The 3 days that followed were a strange dance between authenticity and constant awareness of Amanda Torres's observing presence. The journalist was discreet but omnipresent. She appeared at the most unexpected moments, always with an enigmatic smile and apparently innocent questions that contained subtle traps. How exactly did you meet? She asked during breakfast on the resort terrace, while the rising sun painted the sea gold. We met at the Harrison mansion, replied Olivia honestly. I was working as a chef for an event when Alex noticed me. Love at first sight? Inquired Amanda, the tone slightly ironic. Alex smiled, his eyes meeting Olivia's. Not exactly. I was initially attracted by her independence, by the way she wasn't impressed with all the ostentation around her. That's rare in my social circle. And you, Olivia, what attracted you to a billionaire heir? Pure coincidence, I imagine. The sarcasm was palpable, but Olivia wasn't intimidated. Actually, the money was an obstacle, not an attraction, she replied calmly. I grew up seeing rich people treat people like my mother, who worked as a cleaner, as invisible. My first impression of Alex was of just another privileged and arrogant playboy. Amanda raised her eyebrows, clearly not expecting that response. And what changed that perception? Olivia looked at Alex, pondering her answer. There was so much she could say, genuine moments they had shared, small but significant gestures. But she opted for the most fundamental truth. He saw me. Really saw me. Beyond appearances, beyond stereotypes. How many people in life really see us as we are? The sincerity momentarily disarmed the journalist, who made a quick note before changing the subject. During those days, Alex and Olivia continued the restructuring work at the resort, now with Robert as interim manager. Amanda accompanied them to meetings, observed their interactions with employees and guests, and even dined with them every night. To the couple's surprise, the more the journalist got to know them, the more her initial skepticism seemed to give way to genuine curiosity. On the evening of the second day, as they dined at the recently renovated resort restaurant, Amanda made an unexpected observation. You two work exceptionally well together. There's an unusual synergy for such a diverse couple. Diverse, repeated Alex. Different backgrounds, different life experiences. Normally that creates friction, especially in stressful situations. Differences can be complementary when there's mutual respect, replied Olivia. Alex understands finance and corporate administration. I understand people and operations. Together we cover a broader spectrum. It's more than that, added Alex, taking Olivia's hand on the table. There's a perspective that you only acquire by fighting for your place in the world. I grew up having everything given to me. Privileges, opportunities, connections. Olivia earned every inch of her way. That grants a wisdom that no MBA can teach. Amanda studied them for a moment before asking the question that clearly consumed her. And what about the rumors? About the bet between friends, about the marriage arranged to shock society? Do you categorically deny them? The silence that followed was heavy. Alex and Olivia exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. Finally, Alex took a deep breath. The beginnings of relationships are rarely pure or altruistic, Ms. Torres. We all bring baggage, hidden motives, insecurities. What really matters is the journey of transformation. That doesn't answer my question, insisted Amanda. No, it doesn't, agreed Olivia, her gaze firm. Because the question isn't whether or not there were controversial elements at the beginning of our relationship. The question is what we discovered along the way. What we built, despite everything. On the last day of Amanda's stay, as the journalist packed to return to New York, Alex received a call from Ryan. Alex, you need to return to Riverdale immediately. His friend's voice sounded urgent. James told Patricia Winslow everything. About the bet, everything. And she's going to publish the full story in Sunday's social column. Alex felt his blood freeze. How did this happen? He asked, keeping his voice low so that Amanda, in the room next door, wouldn't hear. Apparently he was drunk at a party and bragged about how you were fooling everyone. He mentioned the value of the bet, the contract, everything. Damn, muttered Alex. When? 2 days ago. I tried to warn you before, but you weren't answering. Your mother is in total panic, threatening to disinherit you if the scandal goes forward. After hanging up, Alex found Olivia on the veranda, observing the sunset with a serene expression that soon transformed into concern upon seeing his face. What happened? He told her about the call, watching the color drain from her face. We need to go back, he concluded. Try to control the damage before the story is published. No, replied Olivia, surprising him. We're not going to run away or try to cover up the truth. We've done that for too long. What do you suggest then? Let's tell our story, ourselves in our way, before Patricia does it her way. The suggestion was audacious, almost reckless, but the more Alex thought about it, the more sense it made. To whom? How? A slow smile formed on Olivia's lips. I think we have a talented journalist right here at the resort, don't we? An hour later, they were sitting with Amanda Torres in the presidential suite, all cards on the table. They told everything. The bet between board friends, the business contract, the original plan for a divorce after 6 months, the first days of acting. But they also shared what came afterward, the gradual dissolution of the masks, the mutual respect that blossomed, and finally, the unexpected love that grew between them. Amanda listened to everything without interrupting, her face impassive, as she took occasional notes. When they finished, she remained silent for a long moment. Why are you telling me this now? She finally asked. Why not before? Because we wanted you to see who we are today before judging who we were yesterday, replied Alex. And because we needed to be sure ourselves, added Olivia. Sure that what we feel is real, not just an extension of the act or a defense mechanism against exposure. You realize you're giving me the power to completely destroy your reputations, right? Amanda pointed out the obvious. Patricia only has rumors. You just gave me a complete confession. We're giving you the opportunity to tell a true story, and a much more interesting one than just a social scandal, corrected Olivia. A story about how something genuine can be born from the most cynical and unlikely circumstances. Amanda studied them, as if trying to decipher a particularly complex puzzle. And if I choose to publish just the scandal, the cruel bet, the cold contract, the manipulation, then that will be your privilege as a journalist, replied Alex calmly. But you'll miss the opportunity to tell a story about transformation and human growth, something we all desperately need today. When Amanda left the resort the next morning, she gave no indication of which direction her report would take. Alex and Olivia remained in uncertainty, but there was a strange peace between them. Regardless of what came to the public, they were finally being true to each other and to themselves. 2 days later, they returned to Riverdale, prepared to face the storm that certainly awaited them. The Harrison mansion seemed strangely silent when they arrived. Eleanor greeted them in the entrance hall, her face a mask of restraint that barely disguised the contained fury. In the office, was all she said, guiding them down the corridor. Inside, Richard Harrison was sitting behind the imposing desk, a copy of American Elite magazine open in front of him. Ryan and Matthew were also present, looking uncomfortable and tense. Only James was absent, probably too embarrassed to face the consequences of his indiscretion. Have you seen this? Asked Richard, pushing the magazine toward them. On the cover, a photo of the couple walking hand in hand on the resort beach, with the headline in golden letters, "Love Beyond Appearances, How a Cruel Bet Transformed into a True Love Story." Olivia picked up the magazine with trembling hands, quickly flipping through it until she found the main report. Amanda Torres had told everything: the controversial beginning, the bet between privileged friends, the business contract. But surprisingly, the main focus of the article was on the transformation that both had experienced. In a world obsessed with appearances and status, Alex and Olivia represent a rare journey of self-discovery, read the first paragraph. What began as a cruel game between bored men transformed into a story of authentic love that defies all social stereotypes. The article included interviews with resort employees who testified to the teamwork and mutual respect that the couple demonstrated. There was also a special section about the restructuring work they did together, highlighting how both of their complementary skills had saved a traditional enterprise on the verge of collapse. "She told everything," muttered Eleanor, her voice trembling with indignation. "The entire scandal, all the shame." "But she also told the rest," pointed out Alex. "The part that really matters." Richard studied his son for a long moment, his gaze inscrutable. "Do you really love this woman?" he finally asked, pointing to Olivia. "With all my heart," replied Alex without hesitation. "And if that means I'm no longer welcome in this family, or in the business, I'm willing to accept the consequences." To everyone's surprise, Richard let out a short laugh. "Do you know why I bought that resort in Key West when I was young? Against the advice of all the investors and your mother's family?" Alex frowned. confused by the change of subject. "No, you never told me." "Because that's where I met your mother. She was a receptionist at the hotel that existed before, the manager's daughter, not an aristocratic heiress as everyone thinks." He cast a significant look at Eleanor, who seemed about to interrupt. "Yes, dear, I think it's time to stop the charades. We aren't a blue-blooded family for generations. We're new money, like so many others." The revelation fell like a bomb in the office. Eleanor sank into a chair, defeated, while Ryan and Matthew exchanged astonished looks. "So all this time," began Alex, incredulous. "All this time your mother has been living a fantasy of nobility that she created herself," completed Richard. "And I allowed it, because I loved her and wanted her to have everything she desired. But now I see how much it cost us in authenticity." He turned to Olivia, extending his hand to her. "I apologize for the treatment you received in our home, Olivia. Your presence is already causing positive transformations in this family." Eleanor, recovering from the shocking revelation, stood up with the dignity she could muster. "So now everyone applauds this circus, a bet transformed into a fairy tale by the media. What will our friends say?" "They'll say what they want," replied Alex firmly. "But the truth is that this bet gave me something that all your money and influence never could. Genuine happiness." In the days that followed, Amanda Torres's report had the expected effect, an initial shock followed by fascination and, surprisingly, admiration. The transformation story captivated the public, who were tired of empty scandals and eager for authentic narratives of personal growth. Instead of the social ostracism that Eleanor so feared, the Harrison family became the center of a new conversation about authenticity and evolution in relationships. The resort in Key West, now under Robert's competent management, began to attract a new type of client, people interested in genuine experiences instead of empty ostentation. 6 months after the publication of the report, Alex and Olivia inaugurated the Essence restaurant in Riverdale, a joint venture that merged her culinary expertise with his business vision. The concept was simple but revolutionary: high gastronomy food in a welcoming environment without pretensions, with a diverse team and a pricing policy that made the experience accessible to a wider audience. On opening night, as they observed, the packed dining room, a fascinating mixture of clients from all social classes, Olivia approached Alex, who was talking with his parents. Eleanor, who had gradually accepted the new reality, even smiled when she saw her. "May I steal my husband for a moment?" asked Olivia politely. Eleanor nodded, a resigned but not hostile expression on her face. On the small private veranda they had created at the back of the restaurant, under a starry Riverdale sky, Olivia handed Alex a small envelope. "What's this?" he asked, curious. "Open it." Inside there was a positive pregnancy test. Alex looked at Olivia, his eyes widening in understanding and then filling with tears of joy. "Are you—" "Yes," she confirmed, smiling through her own tears. 10 weeks. It's still early, but, well, I thought you'd like to know." Alex took her in his arms, gently spinning her before carefully placing her back on the ground. "You continue to surprise me, Olivia Bennett Harrison. When I think I couldn't love you more, you prove me wrong." Embraced under the starry sky, they reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought them there, from a cruel bet between bored friends to a genuine love that would now create a new life. "You know what's most ironic?" commented Olivia, nestled in Alex's arms. "Your friends lost the bet after all." "How so?" "Well, the bet was that you would marry someone who didn't fit high society standards just to shock people, right? But in the end, you married someone you truly love. That means they lost." Alex laughed, kissing her on the forehead. "Then I suppose they still owe me $3 million. How about we use that money to create a foundation that helps young culinary talents from humble origins?" "Perfect," agreed Olivia. "It would be a poetic way to transform something that began so wrong into something permanently good." As they returned to the party, hand in hand and with the future open before them, Olivia reflected on how life can surprise us. What had begun as a cold contract, a business transaction based on prejudices and arrogance, had blossomed into something that no money could buy. True love, mutual respect, and the promise of a family built not on appearances or social expectations, but on the solid foundation of two people who had learned to see each other, really see each other, beyond all masks and conventions. And perhaps that was the true bet that Alex had won. The bet on the transformative power of authentic love. Dear listeners, we hope that Alex and Olivia's story has touched your hearts. We saw how a bet born of arrogance transformed into a journey of self-discovery and true love. For more equally moving stories that explore the complexities of human relationships, we have a special playlist prepared especially for you. Find it here, clicking to the left. If you enjoyed this unlikely love story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your like on the video. Every day we bring unique narratives that make us reflect on the true values of life. Who knows what the next story will be that makes your heart beat faster? Share in the comments what touched you most in this journey of Alex and Olivia. We're eager to read your impressions.